everybody. Happy Friday. Another big game for Norwich City on the horizon tomorrow afternoon at Carrow Road. Cardiff City, of course, the visitors. They're out of form. Norwich City hot in form. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Connor Southwell as we preview the big game. Connor, sun's shining. The mood feels pretty good. We're a few days on from that victory over Watford, 4 goals, 3 points. It was a game maybe overshadowed by events off the pitch as such, but what was your kind of reaction, feelings around that game, I suppose, now a few days on?
Yeah, it was utterly bizarre, wasn't it? I think the first words I uttered to you guys as we left Carrow Road was, "Blimey, I feel like they've lost tonight." That's how it felt leaving, and that's how it felt after speaking to Gabby Sarro and after obviously listening to David Wagner conduct his post-match interviews as well. Yeah, look, it was not nice, I think, for anybody, and probably actually for those supporters who did elect to boo, and they'll all have their individual reasons why they did that. And yeah, it felt like for me a real moment, and I don't know if it's going to be the moment that actually maybe everyone pulls together off the back of it, or maybe this is slightly dependent on what happens tomorrow, or if it's the one that I think maybe will fracture what has existed even more. I know that there's been a lot of people said that maybe it's a bit of a, not a storm in a teacup, but maybe it's been overplayed slightly, and I can understand that perspective as well, because actually for there were periods in the game as well for balance where I thought the crowd were excellent. I thought they really got behind the players. It was just obviously around that moment and that kind of spell, which was such a weird spell in the game anyway, quality kind of eroded out of it. But yeah, still reflect on it as just a very bizarre evening. It didn't even feel, to be honest, like a game of football had happened at the end. So I guess it makes it even more important that now it's backed up with a win. And actually, I don't want to go too early on this, but I think given the events that happened, I think we're going to get a really united front at Carrow Road tomorrow. I certainly hope that's the case, and hopefully it can drive Norwich on to another victory. But yeah, even 3 days later, I still reflect on it as just so bizarre. I'm still struggling to even comprehend it happened, to be honest.
Yeah, a few people in the comments. Robin saying, for morale, I feel anything less than a win could be detrimental tomorrow, but I'm confident. Connor, just picking up, I suppose, on that point of unity, how crucial is it now? 14 games to go. Norwich right in the mix. They're level on points with a clutch of teams that are looking for that sort of 6th and 5th place. Of course, West Brom are 4 points ahead of the Canaries at the moment with a game in hand, but still in touching distance. Unity feels like the way forward if Norwich are going to achieve what could be a good end to the season if they sneak into the top 6.
Yeah, it's absolutely key. It's a key ingredient, and I think the way I look at it is this: there's 3-4 teams I think vying now for 2 spaces, maybe 5 probably from West Brom, maybe down to Bristol City. That might be a bit more, but that's certainly how I see it. Obviously, teams can come up and move, but that is how it looks at this moment in time. And Norwich City are very much within that. So I think, and look, I've been critical of what they've done this season in parts, and critical of some of the decisions that David Wagner has made, and some of the performances and some of the way that they've tried to play. But I think the one thing that I feel now is that actually, and Chris Sutton summed this up quite nicely in his piece. If I was a fan in this situation, I wouldn't want to be the reason that my club fell short. And I think what I see it as is, look, they might not be good enough. They might run out of steam. The season might fizzle out. Equally, it might not. And they might push, and they might do it anyway, irrespective of what the atmosphere is. But I just think, for everyone's sake, to not be not be viewed as the reason as to why something didn't happen, I think is the way that I would view it now. And look, whatever your gripes are and whatever your frustrations are with David Wagner, with the way the club's been run, with the people in positions of power, with what they've been said to you, of what has been said to you and aimed at you, I think ultimately everybody wants the same thing, right? And that's for Norwich City to finish in the top 6 and to have a good crack at trying to get back to the Premier League. And if the way you do that is by pulling together for 14 games, 13 after tomorrow, then I think that's kind of what needs to happen. And it's clear that the players need it. And in many ways, I think we need to park, and everyone needs to park. And I think this is maybe what was graphically illustrated the other night. This sense maybe of what comes next. I think at the moment that's irrelevant, and we can cross that bridge when we come to it, and we can talk about it in the summer. But you've got a group of players there who desperately want support and desperately want that help from the stands, because, and this is the case for all of the teams in that top 6 debate, they're all flawed. They've all got struggles and they've all got difficulties. If not, they'd be higher in the league table. So they all have vulnerabilities. And sometimes, particularly at home, you can mask them by creating a really intense atmosphere. And actually, I think, you look at what Norwich City have done over the last 9 games at home. It's been tremendous. It's almost promotion winning form in that period. Certainly at home, away, it's been slightly different. So I think all I would say is you've got an opportunity to, unite and I guess to ensure that there's not opportunities created for other people, certainly throughout, through external factors. If Norwich City aren't going to get in the top 6, let's make sure that's because of what happens on the pitch and not because of what happens in the stands. And how that affects people, obviously, and you have to accept that it's going to be performance led, and it's going to be a result, and to an extent, results led, but more so performances and intent led as well. So, as much as fans need to do that, I think there also needs to be an acceptance club side, and from David Wagner, that actually that needs to be backed up with taking risks, making big decisions, trying to ensure that everything is pointed towards attacking this target. So I think as with any of these things, it's a two-way street, but there is a real opportunity now. And this is what I say. I hope Tuesday kind of exasperated the divisions that do exist, have existed all season, have existed for the last 2 or 3 years. And I just hope for 14 games between now and the end of the season, they can be parked and we can push and focus on football. And then come the summer, because there's 3 outcomes. They win the playoffs and they get up. They obviously get in the playoffs and lose, or they don't make the playoffs. And after any of those outcomes, we can debate what comes next. But I think in the right here and the right now, it all needs to be focused on these next 14, and nobody should look longer than that.
Yeah, Mark summing it up very well here on Facebook. We all just need to get behind David now, irrelevant whether he'll be here next season or not, get in the playoffs and go from there. I don't think he's a long-term solution, but with these players, we should get in the top 6. I think that's a fairly fair assessment. Relatively sort of mixed injury update yesterday from David Wagner. Johnny Rowe, of course, we knew that injury and how big a loss that could be for Norwich. Shane Duffy, an update on his situation, going to be out for sort of 2 to 2.5 weeks, which is probably not as long as I think some people may be worried when it was going to be a 10-day wait for a scan and you kind of start to fear the worst. Josh Sargent, touch and go. Pete asking whether he'll be playing tomorrow. I think it's all involved in whether he's involved in the training session today as to whether he's going to make the match day squad tomorrow. David Wagner said he's never used a player that's not trained the match day -1. One positive, Connor, though, is Onel Hernandez, who looks like he is going to be available for tomorrow. I mean, he's a player that's coming for criticism this season, probably justified at points. His numbers in terms of goal contributions probably isn't where he wants it to be himself personally, but also where, David Wagner and Norwich City fans more generally will want it to be. But you could see the impact he had on Tuesday night. I thought he was probably one of the standout players offensively and defensively on his game from minute 1 to the point he was subbed off around the 55th minute. How sort of crucial has this improvement been for him, I suppose, and potentially how big could it be for Norwich City moving forwards now into these final 14 games of the season if he can keep sort of that consistency?
Yeah, it's been huge. I think, and I know that he's been working tirelessly behind the scenes to try and make this happen for himself and to try and basically pull himself out of what he would admit has not been a season that is up to his own standards. And he's someone that even now, and I know there's been a lot of frustration. He's generally a lot of frustration around him. I think in terms of effectiveness, I think he is still someone who can have effect on championship matches when he's at his best. And I think we saw that on Tuesday, and we also saw that last season when Wagner came in. And I remember there was a big, a big call for him to get a new contract when it arrived, and that was a testament to his performances. So we know at this level what he is, and he is a frustrating winger, and sometimes he lacks end product, but in terms of his unpredictability and his pace and his power, I think he does give Norwich a different option, particularly with Rowe out to what they have. He's a bit more direct and a bit more of a blunt instrument than maybe Borja Sainz, who's a bit more intricate and creative, and probably technical than Hernandez. And I think actually Tuesday was probably the point. And I think, to be fair, we've seen it in a few games. I mean, QPR, I felt he came on and had a good impact. There was, I think, Coventry, he came on and had a good impact, if I'm thinking of the right game. There's another game that he came on and I thought he had a good impact as well. So I think this is something that has been building for Hernandez. And as I say, I know how hard he's been working to try and make it happen for himself. He cares deeply about the club, and that's obvious. It's not it's not a point that excuses a lack of performance by any means. And again, he knows that. So it's good, I think, to see that hard work has come at the result of some substance, and that's what he's needed in his game, really. Like you say, it's been the numbers, hasn't it, that's kind of been disappointing, I think, for him. And yeah, it was a brilliant bit of quality. And actually, I think what he did in that moment and what he doesn't do enough is actually just took a yard to slow down and to assess. Usually he's 100 miles an hour all the time and flying balls across that, aren't necessarily aimed towards men. This was very calculated, placing a ball in the area for Ashley Barnes to go and attack. So, yeah, we just need that Carrow Road goal now, don't we, to kind of cap it all off. But I think over the last few weeks, he has, and we have seen progress from him. I mean, the fact that we've got to a situation where, whatever you thought of it, that fans are booing the fact that he's coming off in a game for Norwich City, I think that shows kind of the progress that he's made over the last few weeks, because that's certainly not a situation that I think anyone would have envisaged certainly months ago, maybe even weeks ago. So yeah, he's worked hard. He's getting his just desserts for that. And like we say, we need to make sure now that there's a level of consistency behind it. And we've seen, I think it was around this stage last season, he had a really impressive burst of form when Wagner came in. So hopefully he can do the same again between now and the end of the campaign.
Conversely, one player that will be hoping to pick up his form is Gabriel Sara. Paddy did ask David Wagner around this yesterday. I'm just going to play the clip quickly and then we'll talk around him and what he needs to do moving forwards into these final 14 games of the season.
And moving forward, very big goal for Gabby Zara. I think midweek, first one since early November. Has he been struggling a little bit, or are we really judging him against that really high level that he was hitting in terms of goals and assists in recent weeks?
Listen, I think on one side, no one should underestimate. He played, I think, more or less every game from the first to the final minute, and he has put on numbers so far. I don't know them exactly, to be fair, but I know in terms of assists and goals, he is quite up at the top in our team for sure, and he works very, very hard. And obviously, performance-wise, some are average, some above average, but he never is really below par. This is the truth as well. Luckily, we have with Kenny and Nacho at the minute, and don't forget Liam, who is doing fantastic in training and pushing the other guys as well. Guys who can't wait to support, who can't wait to get their minutes as well. And for him, I think personally, it was so important to have a goal again, because nothing is better for a football player than this goal-scoring feeling, and this will give him a further push for sure.
Yeah, been involved in all 32 league games so far this season, all from the start as well. 9 assists, 6 goals. His last goal in the Championship back in November, did score against Bristol Rovers in the FA Cup more recently than that. But huge goal for him on Tuesday night against Watford. His assist tally not been quite so good as well in recent months. What's it been kind of maybe for him? Has it been the level of games, the amount of intensity and hard work he's had to put in that's maybe starting to catch up with him, or is a rest due for him, or what can he do moving forward kind of to get back to those levels that we know is in him? He's a quality player at this this division. He should be a step higher, really.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost on that, which is why I'm sort of smiling to myself. When he said average, I thought he said Everest, and I was like, I can't get into all that again. So I'm glad I misheard that. Yeah, look, he's played certainly started every game. I think he's maybe Norwich's only ever-present player this season. I think that's a testament to maybe Kenny McLean is as well. I think, actually thinking about it, but he might have missed one or two. But yeah, certainly one of Norwich's only ever-present players this season, and naturally that's going to take his toll. And I think as Paddy framed in the question itself, you're comparing, I think, his output, which was already at a very, very high level, to kind of where he is now. And Wagner's right. I don't think in this period we've seen any absolute howlers from him, and any sort of marks that you'd put below a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 maybe. So I think the fact that his level is where it has been, and we're talking maybe about a drop in output rather than a drop in performance, I think is, again, shows the quality that he has. And the three that Norwich have really are Sargent and Sarah and Rowe, and they're the quality players. Obviously now missing Rowe and possibly without Sargent tomorrow. So I think there is probably going to be a little bit more of an emphasis on Gabriel Sara to try and step up. And you look at the numbers, certainly in terms of chance creation, he ranks very, very highly, if not tops the lists of chance creation in the league. As you said, I think the fact that he hasn't been able to reach those levels. I think there's a few factors in that. One is obviously the position that he's being asked to play at points. I think he, by his own admission, is deep. It's new to him. It's perhaps the best part of, or maybe not the best part of the pitch where he feels that his qualities lie. There's obviously a confidence element as well. The team have, even though they've been kind of winning games, and we spoke at the start about the atmosphere, I think that probably has affected some players more than it has the others. And also naturally during a 46 game season, I think players' levels are going to kind of fluctuate and drop and rise at various stages. So hopefully the fact that he's just been through a dip, and I spoke to him after the game on Tuesday night, and I think by his own admission he feels this, and he said even on Tuesday it wasn't his best performance. But you look at what happens when Norwich get him the ball in really good areas. There was a statistic, I think, saying that every shot that he's had on target this season has ended in a goal inside the penalty area. So that shows if Norwich can get him in higher areas and get him the ball in higher areas, that he's a player that can unlock championship games of football. And I think I described John Rowe on maybe last week's show as a game breaker. I think you could put Gabriel Sara into the same category when he's on his best. You're looking at players who can produce moments of individual quality and can unlock games that are quite tight, as tomorrow could be actually. So I think Norwich will probably be looking at him to step up and to try and get him back to the levels he can be. But like you said, I think there's lots of mitigation in that in terms of the amount that he's played. Very busy Christmas period, festive period leading into January, which has been against some very, very good teams as well. The games have been tighter naturally. Some of those games Norwich haven't had as much of the ball as perhaps they or he would like in order to extract all of his qualities out of. So I think all of those are factors, and you hope now with the fixture list maybe looking a bit kinder over the next period, although I still think there's some really tough games coming up for Norwich City actually, that he's able maybe to influence games a lot more than perhaps what we've seen in the last few weeks and months.
Yeah, I see lots of comments and questions flowing through. We'll come around to those very shortly. Just turning the attention now onto Cardiff, Connor. It was a relatively busy January transfer window for them. I think it was 5 signings through the door. Aaron Ramsey's now back from injury. Looks like he's going to be available to start tomorrow. Obviously, we know the talent that bloke's got. He's played for Arsenal and Juventus and other sides, across Europe in terms of the highest level. Cardiff struggled a little bit since Norwich went there in November. Only 5 wins in all competitions, 14th in the division at the moment. But I mean, given kind of last season and staying up based on Reading's points deduction, it feels like a mid-table finish is probably not the worst thing in the world. What have you made of their season so far under Errol Bullitt?
Yeah, exactly that. Pretty middling, to be honest. They're not in the best run of form, and as I said, as we've seen graphically this season, teams can do that and fluctuate, and it takes a game and a moment. As I think we'll probably reflect on at the end of the season. This reverse fixture is a bit of a watershed moment for Norwich City. It was the time where maybe some realizations and home truths were shared about the fact that you can't concede 2 goals a game and expect to win many games at this level. So I think they've endured a tough season. I quite liked them actually when we went to South Wales. I thought they certainly first half they were in control of that game. They came from 1-0 behind, didn't they, to get themselves in front. Josh Bowler, who again I think has been kind of left out because of the change in shape, he was very good that day. But I look at particularly their frontline options and really lack maybe pace and power from there. I think they're quite physical and quite useful, which is interesting to hear Wagner kind of highlight their dangerous offensive set pieces, and I think you can see that within the team. But actually, in open play, I think there's maybe not too many elements that you would fear. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey coming back adds that quality that could potentially knit it together. I still think there's a player in Yaku Mete who hasn't quite been able to adapt since he moved from Reading to South Wales, and again some individual players in there that I think you would really like. David Turnbull, who's a name that is familiar to Norwich players, but even the likes of Siopis, who was earning rave reviews at the start of the season, Ollie Tanner, who scored a big goal against Swansea. So I think they have got some good individual talent. Whether that, obviously, like you say, whether they can come to Carrow Road in the run of form that they are and produce more than what I think will be quite a conservative, pragmatic, counter-attacking game. But actually, you look at maybe some of the teams that have had success at Carrow Road this season, and it's been that strategy. I go back to maybe Preston as an example, where they were really obdurate that day and made life really difficult for Norwich. So I don't think that, we can look at the form tables and assume that this is going to be an easy one for Norwich, because they've still got quality and players that can hurt them. And I still think there's a lot of areas that, from Norwich's side that can be exploited. So we'll see how it goes. But certainly, you look at the form table and you look at where the two teams are respectively at this moment in time, and it does feel like a game that Norwich City are going to be favourites for.
Yeah, a couple of things off the pitch. On the pitch, off the pitch. Johnny Rowe, Championship goal of the month. How big a boost is that for him, Connor, particularly given he's now going to be out with injury? We know how down he is about that and how much that's going to affect him. But this could be a little boost for him and in terms of, having to sit out for a while. That really brilliant goal against Hull deserved it, didn't he?
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful goal, and it sums up exactly what I was saying. A player that can break games, that's had a wonderful season. It's a shame again that he's probably being left to rue injuries as he was for basically all of last season that kept him out. So he can only, like you say, I think there does come a period where this kind of thing happens, where you almost have to let him feel down about it and let him not grieve. That's too strong, but let him almost get over the fact that this is the realization and this is the timeline. As you say, there'll be nobody who will hate being out at this point of the season more than John Rowe, given the season that he's had and how influential he's been to Norwich. So yeah, I think you have to accept it, and then hopefully he can get himself in a position where he can get himself back to full fitness. I'm still a little bit skeptical as to whether we'll see him certainly in the main season. Obviously it may become a different debate if Norwich get to the playoffs, but yeah, it's a hammer blow, isn't it, for him after what's been a tremendous season where he's achieved so much, and but also for Norwich because of the type of figure that he's become, talismanic almost. And if you're going to pick any point of the season, maybe it would be slightly later actually, but this one would be pretty, I think, close to the top of the list where you wouldn't want to lose him. So yeah, it's a wonderful goal. It deserved the award, and there were some really good other options in there as well. Finn Azaz, his goal for Coventry is sublime. So he's beaten off some good competition to win that award.
Yeah, a first chance we've had to speak about season ticket renewals and the idea of safe standing being implemented at Carrow Road. I'm sure we'll get into this in a lot more depth on the podcast tomorrow post Cardiff. But just briefly, Connor, your thoughts on safe standing? How crucial could that be in terms of the atmosphere? We've spoken a little bit about atmosphere this season and maybe the struggles with that, but it feels like probably with the flag, safe standing, that could be huge moving forwards. But also the season ticket renewals, a small increase, fair given the kind of sort of climate we're in and the football that's being produced on the pitch.
On the second point, I'd say inevitable more than fair. I think inevitable, and you've also again it's context, isn't it? I think around that it's difficult for them because, as you said, as much as everyone else is impacted by cost of living crisis and the fact that everything is a little bit more expensive than it used to be. That's the same for running costs and energy costs and all of these type of factors. And obviously Norwich City are losing their parachute payments this summer, so that extra source of income is necessary, I think, really. So obviously contextually it's the second rise in 3 years. I think there's a feeling at the club at the moment that they want to try and make small rises every season perhaps become a little bit more natural for fans after what's been a long period where they were frozen. I think it was nearly a decade that they were frozen before what was a pretty steep increase 2 seasons ago, and then they were obviously frozen again last season. But for me it's difficult, I think, from an optics perspective when you have the most expensive season ticket in the Championship, which is, more costly than, or have done this season, which is more costly than a few Premier League clubs as well. That becomes very difficult when, you start charging fans essentially Premier League prices for Championship football, albeit, they get more home games. So maybe there's a value for money point in there. And obviously I think the context of the season makes it difficult for them to do that. But as I said, sadly, I think the financial predicament they're in, the world that we're all in at the moment, a rise is probably inevitable. That being said, I'm glad it wasn't a super steep one. I think they kind of said, and we spoke about it at length in podcasts, I think they kind of mooted it would be 3% maximum. Well, it's ended up at about between 2 and 3%. So yeah, I think it's inevitable, sadly, and obviously fans will have to take stock of their own individual circumstances over whether or not they elect to renew. And on safe standing, it's a brilliant brilliant piece of news, I think. And, as I understand it, there's sort of other moves going on to try and channel the atmosphere. So the drum, I think we could be seeing that in a bit more of a central position within the Barclay next season in hope to kind of spread the noise around a little bit. And I know the club this season have held a lot of meetings with fan groups about how they can improve atmosphere at Carrow Road. So it's good that off the back of those conversations, this has happened. And obviously the fact that there's going to be a waiting list for like-minded fans who want to create that noise and want to be in that period as well. So, and obviously for those who want to move out. So yeah, it's good, I think, all told. And, as Dan points out in the comments, actually, the increase is a below inflation one. So yeah, I don't think you can begrudge it, but there is obviously always a sad feeling, I think, whenever there's an increase, because football's expensive as it is, and I think of those families of 5 or 6. But yeah, all told, I think the announcement from the price perspective isn't as bad as it could have been, and obviously the safe standing stuff to implement that is really, really positive news. And I, for one, am really excited to see it in action at Carrow Road come the start of next season.
Yeah, staying on atmosphere, we kind of spoke a little bit about the reaction we might get tomorrow from the fan base, after David Wagner's comments and sort of the reaction of Tuesday night. 32 points from 16 home games. That's average 2 points per game, which is exactly where they should be if they want to try and challenge. Potentially could make it 10 games unbeaten as well tomorrow at Carrow Road. So the home form's been pretty good. Struggles have more been on the road. I think it's 16 points from 16 games. So that's probably where the root of their issue is, and that's where they maybe need to address if they're going to try and get in the top 6. But how key game is this tomorrow, Connor, for what could unfold for the rest of the season? Because it feels like the momentum is starting to build. The positive sort of feeling, I suppose, around the place could be benefited, and it feels like 7 points then from this week, given the way we sort of all felt walking out of Loftus Road last week after feeling like we maybe dropped 2 points, could be, I suppose, benefited by the fact that, if we got 7 points from the week, that would then be deemed a pretty successful haul.
Yeah, and I think we said that after the podcast, to be fair. Well, I think we got accused of being too negative, as we seem to quite regularly. But I think we said it was the sense of opportunity missed. But then if you go and win your 2 home games, then you put QPR in a box and you never ever speak about it again. And actually you reflect on the week in a completely different light. So it was one of those games, I think, that was always going to get reflected upon based on how the next 2 had. But I think in whole, as a week to get 2 wins at home and a draw away, as you said there, what is the old adage in the Championship? If you win your home games and get points on the road, then that stands you in pretty good stead. So, yeah, I think it's like you said. I think we'll see the pendulum swing the other way tomorrow. I think we'll see a united Carrow Road determined to get behind the group. Whether that obviously from the start initially, and then what happens from there, I think will be led by what we see on the pitch. And obviously, if Cardiff take a 2-0 lead inside 20 minutes, then I think the crowd's going to be tested in that regard. But as I said, I think everyone will produce the right response, actually, and I hope that that's the case. And Carrow Road is very good at coming up trumps when players need it, I think, in the whole. So yeah, it's a huge game, it's a big game, and one that Norwich can definitely win, and it's there for Norwich to win. And if they can do that, as the table looks at the moment, West Brom have got Southampton tonight. That's going to be a tough game. It's not a foregone conclusion that Southampton win that. Obviously, they lost at Bristol City, but there's a chance even to close that gap, and there's a chance to keep kind of the pressure on those teams around them to keep winning, notably Coventry and Hull, I guess, are the 2 that we're probably looking at about. But you can't discount what Preston and Sunderland have done, even though Sunderland suffered what was a pretty shock defeat in the week, and they'll be looking to respond. So yeah, every game feels seismic, doesn't it, at the moment? And you don't want to stumble, and you don't want to lose ground, I guess. But at home, I think you'd favour Norwich City in the circumstances. And I said, I think actually what happened in midweek could actually work in their favour, hopefully, tomorrow.
Yeah, dipping into some of the comments. Finley on YouTube, Finn Welsh on the bench tomorrow, possibility. I suppose if Sargent is missing, it would open up a slot in the squad, Connor. If you maybe had to pick an academy prospect to get an opportunity, would Finn Welsh be the one you'd go for?
Yeah, him or a Bow, I think, are the 2, aren't they? At the moment, I watched the 21s play at Brighton last weekend. There was a handy stream of that, so I watched that, and I felt Finley Welsh was the most impressive performer, actually, and I've liked him every time I've seen him play. I think there's maybe a need to, in a similar way that we speak about Hernandez, there's probably a need for a bit more consistency in terms of end product and final decision. But He feels to me like someone David Wagner would like in terms of energy and how he gets about the pitch, and he's very creative and technical, quite a low centre of gravity. I guess physicality is maybe an issue that could be raised around Championship football. But I mean, and we said this last week in terms of the show, from a Norwich perspective, for me, I would almost make it an unwritten rule that there's always an academy player on the subs bench. I think that is something that, you know, particularly with how big the benches are now and the amount of changes that you can make, even if they don't get on the pitch, I think it's a worthwhile experience to have. So yeah, I think if Sargent isn't available, it wouldn't surprise me to see Finlay Welsh on there. I think we had a whole back four on there on Tuesday, which was slightly disappointing. So yeah, hopefully between now and the end of the season, we see some of those young players starting to get a little bit more involved in terms of the matchday squads more regularly.
Yeah, Dan on YouTube saying, I love the fact of putting in safe standing, trying to increase the atmosphere. He avoids Carrow Road as it's poor compared to away days. I wish English fans, would look at how good it is in Europe and South America. Finley's asking about the comments that David Wagner made re Liam Gibbs. Comments on Gibbs were frustrating, and surely Wagner realises his management of him and playing him out of position would affect him. Colin, what did you make of those comments around Liam Gibbs? That's kind of, I suppose, gained a little bit of traction on social media, people sort of sharing their thoughts and feelings on the matter. Yeah, Gibbs, I suppose, has been played all over the place at different points this season. Have you maybe rated the development of him, I suppose, over this season? Felt like maybe a loan could have been a good route in January had that option, came available in terms of Norwich, signing a replacement option.
Yeah, and I think he was pretty close by all accounts to going out on loan to the Championship. So I think that shows that maybe his stock hasn't fallen that much as a result of what's happened this year. But yeah, it's been disappointing for a player who obviously was young player of the season, got awarded with a bumper contract, handed the number 8 shirt as well. All of that kind of signified someone who's going to play a key role this season. I think as much as maybe we look and reflect on Liam Gibbs, you also have to look at what he's trying to break, and that's a partnership and a trio, I guess, now that we've thrown Marcelino Nunez into there, given his performances of late, of Kenny McLean and Gabriel Sara predominantly, with Nunez in reserve as well. Plus, obviously, at different points this season, he's Adam Forshaw ahead of him, rightly or wrongly, and that's a different debate that we've had on numerous occasions. So it's been a tough year for him, I think, in terms of his development. You'd say it's stalled. I wrote a piece on this a while ago after, I think he came off the bench or started, and I just don't see him as a wide option. I don't see him as a forward option. I think his best football came for Norwich in that kind of 6.5 type role that we saw somewhere between a 6 and 8 that we saw under Dean Smith last season, and that's where we saw his best levels of football. That being said, we don't get to judge training, we don't see it, we don't watch it. So if David Wagner says that he hasn't been performing up to standards, then we have to take his word for that, and that's something that Liam Gibbs himself has to improve. And actually, I was listening to it's a podcast by Dave Carolan, who used to work for Norwich in yesteryear, and Gary Rowett, and there was quite an interesting episode on young players, and how maybe the toughest period is after all of the contract comes and you get a squad number and you're fully integrated into the first team. I'm not saying this has happened with Liam Gibbs, but I think it's an interesting example. Rowett was talking about a young player that he had at Millwall and how essentially he'd introduced him into the first team, then all of that stuff came, and just saw maybe a loss of spark in them and a loss of not hunger but maybe motivation, because it's natural, I think, whenever you kind of settle in somewhere, and you probably do it in any job, there's probably a slight relaxation, and you can't really afford to do that in football because constantly you're performing to fend off those behind you, but also those that are probably in front of you as well, in terms of players that the club might be looking to sign in the future. So Ben Napper likes him. He rates him highly. Wouldn't surprise me to see him go out on loan next season, depending on kind of what happens with maybe Gabriel Sara and other midfield options. But I think it's hard to look at this season for him as anything other than regressive, really, and that's quite sad after the hope that we had, everyone had for him at the end of last season.
I see a few comments and questions regarding Carlos Cuesta. Of course, there was a link yesterday. The Arsenal coach, 28, worked in some really top clubs across Europe, being involved, wasn't it, Juventus and Atletico Madrid, I believe. Then went to Arsenal's, being part of Mikel Arteta's backroom staff after meeting him through Manchester City on sort of a trip he had there. Shaney asking how accurate are the links with the Arsenal's assistant coach might come to Norwich at the end of the season. And there's a question off the back of it, which brings me on to my second question. Let me pick it back up. Can you see Wagner still being head coach at the end of the season? We've covered that ground quite a lot, so maybe less so. Go over to, I think we spoke about it on the Ben Napper reaction last week's show. You can kind of get a little bit more on that. But on those links, Connor, I suppose it's not helpful maybe given the climate of Norwich's season, 14 games to go. David Wagner's going to be here till the end of the season. These reports and things are always sort of natural when maybe there's a little bit of turbulence around his future. How accurate would you say the links are, I suppose?
Look, I think it's a name that is, that we've heard at various points, I think since November. You're right. I think for me the interesting point is the timing and why that has been put out now, and where it has come from. And I don't know the answer to either of those things. It's obviously up to the people who put the story out there to answer that question. But I think the timing is interesting. Mikel Arteta spoke about it this morning, and you can go and read his quotes over at pinken.com and what he said. And he takes it as a compliment, really, that there's interest. And I think it's clear that Ben Napper has really good connections at Arsenal. So it's an easy link in that aspect. What it means for the future, again, I don't know. I think you still got a very live season with 14 games to go. I think it's worth reiterating as well, David Wagner at this moment in time and for the majority of the season actually has commanded the support and the respect of the playing group that he has. There's a brilliant rapport between them, irrespective of maybe of what people externally think about David Wagner and his methods. And he's definitely made mistakes this season, but no one can deny he's got a playing group, as we've seen, because they've produced moments for him at points that he has needed it on a personal basis and that his job status has needed it. And they are right behind him. And that, I think, is why a lot of them were so, I'd probably say upset about the reaction the other night, actually, and why it maybe affected them to the levels that it did, because they are very much a collective and they include David Wagner in that collective. So look, what happens in the summer will play out and will happen, and could be based on what happens towards the end of the season. Most probably won't be, I think, in my view, and we'll cross those bridges when it comes to it. But equally, what I would say is sporting directors should always, and Stuart Webber made a point of saying this at the start of his tenure, they should always be looking to what and who is next. And so I don't think that it's a bad thing that Norwich City have an active list of candidates to be their next head coach. That should always exist. And I think maybe the issue post Daniel Farke was that it became a bit muddied in terms of it existing before. So yeah, that's what I would say on it, really.
Yeah, park it till the summer. Get behind David Wagner and the boys, and let's see what can happen between now and the end of the season. I think it's got to that point in the show. Score prediction time. There is a good comment here from Finley. Abu Kamara appreciation comment. He's ripping it up at Portsmouth. A really good goal during the week, of course, for them. A great assist as well last weekend, which if you haven't seen, definitely go and find that on a highlights reel. The way he took the whole Carlisle defence on and slid the ball through to Paddy Lane was something quite special. Elliot Pearson going for a 3-0 Norwich win tomorrow. Finley going for a 3-1. Barnes signs and Onel to finally get the goal that he requires.
I think he'll explode if and when it happens. I think he'll do about 9 celebrations in one. The shirt will be off. But yeah, it's got to happen eventually, hasn't it?
You think so? With that, Connor, are you backing an Onel Hernandez goal tomorrow, and are you feeling a Norwich City win?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm feeling a Norwich win. I think it will be quite emphatic as well. I'm probably with a lot of the comments. I could see 3-0, 3-1, something like that. I think just because of the mood and with all of the blood that's been let this week, I think there will be a togetherness and a united front, I think, and I think that will yield a positive result. Hopefully in as well weather as good as today, because we were talking about how cold it was last week. It certainly isn't today. So yeah, I could see I could see a comfortable Norwich City win tomorrow. So I'm gonna go 3-0. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm feeling very confident for tomorrow. I think Aaron Ramsey being involved for Cardiff probably does add a slightly different dimension. I think I was speaking to a Cardiff commentator last night on Terrace Talk, which you can go over and watch now on our YouTube channel, and he kind of spoke about how Cardiff looked a different side at the start of the season with Aaron Ramsey involved in it, and he's obviously potentially one that could start tomorrow. Fitness is probably the question with him, but yeah, I'm feeling confident. Going to go for a 4-1 Norwich win, 4 more goals at Carrow Road. Yeah, I think they'll probably leak one, but yeah, a lot depends, I suppose, on Sargent's availability as well as to how confident I am in terms of them scoring 4. But yeah, I think if he's available and Norwich are on all cylinders, that the atmosphere around Carrow Road, the positivity, the mood is good, then I'd back them to get over the line. A good comment here from Dan Mayhew. I know it's another publication, but people should check out the article. Read Ben Gibson on The Athletic. We've published some of the quotes as well regarding him and obviously his young child that's now thankfully out of hospital and fully back integrated in their family. Really good story, and just shows kind of off the field what these players have to deal with. So the support from the stands for them when they cross that white line at Carrow Road is so crucial. Shaney's saying the next few games will show how determined we are of getting the playoff places. Another East Anglian playoff final.
No,
I don't think I could take that, Connor. I really don't think I could take that.
No, absolutely not.
There we go. No from Connor and a no from me on that one. Yeah, if we got them, hopefully they were to be the side that I suppose that were to finish above and maybe get knocked out in the playoffs in the semis, and we get through to the final and then beat whoever they lose to. That would be, I suppose, a nice thing. Hamish there with Rowe injured. Is there a path for a Bow or Lima? And we did kind of just mention that one there. I think we feel Finn Welsh maybe is the one that's progressing his claims. A Bow would be one that would be definitely one to watch out for. But I suppose the contractual situation with him makes it more interesting. Ollie Frost going for 4-0 Norwich. So yeah, lots of confidence this week, which is really good to see. And of course, we'll be at Carrow Road tomorrow afternoon with all the usual coverage. Team news live from 2 p.m. We'll see if Josh Sargent's available for the Canaries. Lots of good content as well across the channel already. So you can get David Wagner's full press conference from yesterday, all the key lines around him and what's going to unfold at Carrow tomorrow. You go listen to that now. I spoke to a Cardiff commentator, as I mentioned already, to get the Cardiff end and the Cardiff perspective. I think Sam's just published Tactics Boards. You can hear his predicted starting 11. Of course, lots of other great content across the Pink and Plus app as well, which is Chris Sutton's latest column is definitely worth a read around unity and what we can do to get behind the boys in the last 14 games of the campaign. I think you and Robert's column as well is now up. And we've got the WhatsApp channel, which if you're not involved on that, then you can go to our sort of social channels and you can find all the links you need to sign up to what should be quite a good platform, I suppose, to get news directly to your phone. We're liking it. So, come and get involved on that one. Shaney with a last late comment. Why did we get Lima on loan? Connor? Easy answer for that. Don't know. There we go. That's the answer.
I think in seriousness, no. I think there was a view that if they could sign him on loan and he did really well, that they felt last summer that there was a pretty easy deal to be done this summer. Whether he's quite done enough for that to happen, obviously there's been a change in sporting director and other kind of circumstances since then. Whether that will happen or whether he'll return to Brazil, I don't know. So that was the thinking behind it. And obviously, it was maybe a player that they felt at the time could go and maybe push for a first team spot. And again, he hasn't quite been able to do that. So yeah, it has looked a bizarre one on paper, and I think maybe there's a realization for them as well. But it has given them an opportunity to look at him, but also maybe to develop relationships with other people in Brazil because of it. So yeah, that's what I'd say really.
There we go. There's your explanation. And with that, we're going to sign off and go and get some lunch. Of course, we'll see you at Carrow Road tomorrow. And let's hope it's another good performance. 3 more points for Norwich and they can get back into that top 6 come the final whistle tomorrow afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. And let's hope this sunshine continues and we get the good atmosphere at Carrow Road tomorrow. Get behind the boys. And thanks for joining us this lunchtime.